A man comes back home from work to his beautiful wife and only child. He met his wife trying to put their 5 years old son to bed, and feeling guilty for staying out late, he decided to play with his son for a few minutes and put him to bed himself. A few minutes later, it was time to sleep. He had been teaching his son to always pray before sleeping, so he asked him to pray and sleep. Thank you, Jesus, for my daddy. Thank you, Jesus, for my mummy. Thank you, Jesus, for my auntie and uncle. Jesus, please take care of my teacher tonight. The father was curious about the last sentence, so he asked him, "Why did you ask Jesus to take care of her teacher?" His son just shrugged. "I don't know, I just did. Good night, Daddy." The next day, the father got a call from the school. Their son's class teacher died in his sleep. The father was shocked at the coincidence, and later waved it off as that. 2 months later, he was putting his son to sleep again, and as was their tradition, he asked the son to pray before sleeping. Thank you, Jesus, for my daddy. Thank you, Jesus, for my mummy. Thank you, Jesus, for my grandma and uncle. Jesus, please take care of my grandpa for me. The next day, the grandfather died. The man became scared. First time is coincidence, but second time, this is more than a coincidence. What's happening? Does his son have spiritual powers? Can he tell when someone is about to die? So, he took his son out that evening, bought him ice cream and his favorite snacks, and stylishly questioned him about his prayers. Nothing, Daddy. I just pray like you taught me. No big deal, Daddy. The father wanted to tell the mother, but he decided against it. He didn't want to be laughed at or get her unnecessarily worried. Few weeks later, he decided to put the son to bed again, and as he was leaving his room, he overheard the son praying, "Thank you, Jesus, for my daddy. Thank you, Jesus, for my mummy. Thank you, Jesus, for my auntie and uncle Jesus. Please take care of my daddy for me." He almost fainted. He stood by the door, unmoving, as white as a ghost. His wife found him at the door, looking like he had seen a ghost. She rushed into the room, but found him lying down and trying to sleep. "Honey, what's wrong? What's the matter? Why do you look like you've seen a ghost?" His wife asked him. He wanted to confess and tell her everything, but his tongue was tied. He couldn't speak. He just hugged her tight and told her he loved her so much and just wanted to hold her tight. He was not himself, couldn't even sleep, and stayed awake till daybreak. As early as 6 a.m., he stood up, went to his son's room. For the first time, he prepared his son for school, bathed him, fixed his breakfast to the joy and excitement of his wife, and even asked his son to pray for him. After praying for him, he put the son in the school bus and drove to his office. All through the day, he couldn't concentrate or do anything in the office but watch the clock. He thought if he could live till midnight, perhaps he will live and it'll just be a big joke. His son cannot have spiritual powers that allows him to know when someone is dying. It's just coincidence, he told himself. Besides, he felt fine. He can't be dying. By midday, he couldn't cope again, so he decided to go to a church close by. He wanted to drive, but fear of dying in a car accident made him order Bolt. Before the Bolt arrived, he canceled and trekked instead. He stayed in church till service closed, and still he refused to leave until the church security came to ask him politely to leave as they wanted to lock the church. Finally, at midnight he was still alive, and so he decided to go home. As soon as he stepped into his house, his wife ran to him. "Honey, where have you been? Look at the time, it's almost midnight and you weren't answering your phone. I've called you over 50 times. It was then he realized his phone was on silence, and he remembered muting it during the church service he attended earlier. "I'm sorry, my love, but I had a terrible day at work today. Undoubtedly the worst day of my life, and I'll tell you about it tomorrow." His wife replied, "You think your day was bad? Wait till you hear the breaking news. This afternoon, Olga landlord just dropped dead in the middle of his sitting room. Just like that." He stood still with his mouth open.